Howdy, my name is Boyd Hemphill. Some of you know me, some of you don't. The latter portion are the people that I admire because, you know, you're winning. Right now I'm a fractional VP of Engineering, CTO. I've been that off and on since 2007. I specialize in startup rescue in that role. That means you're going out of business, somehow you find me and you have just enough money to pay me to do it. My background is in DevOps, the public cloud, and relational databases. That's how I got my start. I've been a community organizer in the Austin area for years and years. First got started with the PHP meetup as a host, founded and ran the Austin DevOps meetup, which is still around 3,000 people. Got involved with Docker Austin when Docker was originally happening. Can I cancel that? You know, I've been involved in several conferences, DevOps Days as an organizer, founded and ran Container Days in Austin, Boston, and New York City, and LASCON, blah, blah, blah. These days I'm semi-retired. If you have good karma, you will be able to call a former employer one day and say, hey, I want to work 20 hours a week. I want to make $120,000 a year. Sign me up. And they will send you a spreadsheet. The message to you is do a good job, be a good person, and it will come back to you. Because come December 1st, I live in Colorado now. On Tuesdays and Fridays, I won't be working, I'll be skiing, and I won't be thinking about you. All right? Be me. I won't be thinking about security then either, except that my bindings don't fall off. All right. This is true. To date, this year, I have billed companies $55,000 just to fix their AWS accounts. Think about that. You don't want to be that person. What? All right. There we go. I mean, look at me. Do you really want your hard-earned money going to me? I mean, come on now, right? So the first thing I want to, read the effing manual. Make sure you, if you're a leader, or your supervisor understands that's real work. It takes real time, and you deserve it if they want you to be the expert you intend to be. This is the AWS well-architected framework. It is the manual. Printed, it would be roughly 300 pages. Azure's is about 700, I think. Google has one too. It's about the same as AWS, yada, yada. All the public clouds have these things these days. This is essentially like a compliance regime, but it's not required. Okay? We're going to focus on the security pillar, obviously, and a couple of other things from the other pillars. So, another level set. Before you got breached, please, sir, may I have $1 for security? After you got breached, you're rolling in it, right? And, that's funny and ironic and all that, but what it really doesn't communicate is your cyber insurance rates went through the roof. So this pile of money this dude's laying on, it's about half that size, actually, because your cyber insurance rates went up. If you think back a couple of years, for those of you here to our Snake's talk, that the second keynote when he talked about cyber insurance and how it's, basically the only thing CISOs think about, it becomes really obvious to reason about that. So this is the blow up of the security pillar for AWS, another level set. We want to implement a strong identity foundation. Shouldn't be a surprise there. Traceability, we need some forensics if something goes wrong. Apply security at all layers. That's from the network, the outer layer, all the way down to, yes, the application. People forget about that. It needs to be secured, right? Apply security at all the layers, automate the security best practices when you can. And when you can't automate something, what is the very next thing you should think to do? Anyone? Bueller? Document that stuff! Write it down! Because if you don't, you are the dumb sucker who is on the hook to do it every time. If you have Confluence, write it down there. SharePoint, write it down there. Put those links in Slack or Teams or whatever. Broadcast that. When somebody asks you a question, don't answer it. Write it down and send them a link. Okay? Don't be a hero. Heroes are zeros. And then protect the data in transit and rest. Silver said I had to be entertaining. He scares me. He's got lots of tattoos. So, there you go. All right. So, and a couple words on risk. In this crowd, I think that risk assessment is kind of like, the thing we swim in, but I also think it's worth, again, making sure that we understand what risk is. Risk is essentially an adverse event and the probability that it will happen. Oh my God, a bomb could hit US West and puppies will die. What's the probability that those puppies are gonna die? Okay, well, it's actually pretty near zero. However, the probability that a hurricane will hit US East 1 Virginia is historically very high. That's real, I'm not making that up. Okay, so where should we put our infrastructure if we're a startup or if we're thinking about opening a new AWS region? The answer is not US East 1. Oh, the other thing, US East 1 is where all the new stuff goes, so you're a guinea pig. Don't be there. Okay. Another word on risk. Let's get a little less snarky. There's actually a third component, which is and this is what the business really cares about, the cost of prevention versus mitigation. This is assuming that you're going to do something. Remember, you can choose not to do something. That's okay. Write it down. Did I mention that? Write down that you made the decision not to do something. So if there's the 30,000 tickets that Tanya was talking about, and you decide not to do something, write in the ticket, decided to take no action for this reason. Then when it comes up again, you can just point people at the ticket. You know that link thing? And you're not Bill Murray in Groundhog Day anymore. That's a good life, or at least it's the beginning of a good life. All right, so did I mention writing down decisions in findable places? Yeah, I even wrote it in all caps there. That's why I was yelling, because all caps is yelling, because the internet has its own culture, right? Okay, last thing I want to do is this. I know a lot about risk, blah, blah, blah. Collectively in this room, I am 100% certain that you know more about risk than I do. In fact, I'm going to show you a magic trick. I want you to consider the average IQ in the room right now. It just went up. It just went down. Please comment. All right, and then some cloud concepts we need for those who aren't familiar. A region is a vast area. For instance, US West 2 is often referred to as Oregon. US West 1 is referred to as California. Big places, right? So regions are publicly known. Everyone knows where Oregon is. Well, this is America. We suck at geography. So maybe not, but I'm gonna go with it. I have hope. All right. Availability zones are actual physical data centers inside of a region. For instance, the Virginia region has 5. The Oregon region has 3. And these are separated far enough by distance so that a device like an EMP might affect one AZ, but not another. They all have separate power. They have separate internet connectivity, backbone connectivity, so that, again, if one goes offline, it doesn't necessarily impact the other. The key thing about AZs is they are the easy button. For example, you have an RDS instance. That's a relational database instance. Everyone knows that duplicating your data in real time is hard. Unless you're in AWS or Azure or whatever, and you click the button that says, I would like a real-time copy of my data. Now you just doubled your cost for that database, but you also gain superpowers, which I'll talk about a bit if we get there. Okay? So keep that in mind. Anything within a region is relatively easy. The moment you want to cross regions for whatever reason, things get complicated and you often have to roll your own or look at the opportunity for a third-party solution. Pardon me. And the last thing is the root account. A lot of people, as professionals, really don't encounter the root account. But if you're standing up an AWS account for the first time, you do that with the root account. When you sign up, you're signing up with an email, you give it a password, you get a root account. The first thing you should do is jot down the password. Hopefully it was secure. I'll go through a little bit more of what that means. Set up MFA, and then put that in a break glass in case of case, or a safe, and forget about it. Well, there's one more step because you just locked yourself out. Create an IAM account. I'm sorry? Yeah, yes, rotate, rotate, rotate. We'll get there. Okay, so those concepts. This is just a visual of regions around the world and then what's happening inside of a region, separate data centers. Again, physically far enough apart that bad things generally won't happen. Unless you're Virginia, because hurricanes are really big. So what do you do first when you create that root account? When you open that AWS account, or when you're given an AWS account like I am, hey, we got hacked and all the ransomware is eating our stuff. Please help us. Well, I'm going to set up a billing alert, because oftentimes what happens when ransomware hits is a crypto mining operation follows. All right. So as a company leader, the first window into the health of a business is money. It's always money. And if you leave with nothing else from me today, please understand that when you're talking to a director, a VP, a chief operating officer, and you're not making your argument tie off to dollars, you're losing. It's on you to do that legwork. Executives aren't stupid, they're time constrained. So have some empathy for them if you want them to have some empathy for you. Because empathy is a two-way street. Sympathy, which was talked about in that room over there just an hour ago, is the, hey, yeah, man, nice job. All right, so set up a billing alert. AWS is going to get its money no matter what. It's like the IRS. So set something sensible. If you're a new startup, set it at $200. You can get a lot done for $200. And whomever your colleagues are, if you're constrained that way, the moment you hit that alert, oh, wow, we're spending more than $200. Let's have a conversation about what that means because our A round hasn't come in yet or our seed round hasn't come in yet or whatever. Okay? If you're a larger organization that has more sophisticated ways to predict spend, set it there. But make sure that you're going to react. Okay? Because, hey, if somebody pops you and they start using your infrastructure, you're going to notice because your bill went up. We're 2 weeks in and we've already blown through what's going on. Okay? Normally what happens is a developer had a good idea, and that good idea was way more expensive than they were thinking about because they were thinking about the good idea and its implementation, not its cost. All right. So, oh, wait, I'm sorry. One thing about the slides. Rather than showing you how to do things, which is boring, I'm just giving you some prompts that I would use to go do it because I don't remember how to do this stuff. I'm old and I forget stuff. So, the next thing to do is share responsibility. Okay? In the root account, you're able to set up email addresses for various things, like a billing address is one of those. Have a standard for that. The typical one that I see would be AWS dash the last four numbers of the account dash at example.com. All right? And then let your onboarding process with your corporate IT folks ensure that all your DevOps and security people that care about that stuff, whatever that role is assigned to that. Now, if the billing alert gets popped, a bunch of people are going to see it who all feel a sense of responsibility for that, and an informed conversation is going to happen. Remember, all responsible parties, don't be a hero. A Slack channel works great for this too. I actually recommend both because I tend to pay way more attention. I'm a professional email ignorer. I'll just admit it. All right, so I tend to pay more attention to Slack than I do to email. Therefore, I would do both. And then learn your way around the Cost Explorer. I'll do more with that in a little bit. Your light is going off and on you. Okay. So push the budget down. Like if I'm a director, I'm not primarily concerned with the budget. I'm concerned that my team is telling me about the budget. I'm pushing that responsibility down to them because they're not managing, my team, my individual contributors aren't managing the whole budget for me. They're managing that AWS piece. That's career growth for them because some of those individual contributors are going to become the leaders of tomorrow. They need to be developed. And to be developed, they need responsibility. And what you will find if you are a leader is the more responsibility you can give to the people who work for you, the happier those people are and the longer they're going to stay because they feel like you're investing in them. Don't fear delegating, pushing decisions down. Decision fatigue is a real thing. The more you can spread that out over your group, the less tired you're going to be when you go home to play with your kids or drive your car, ride your bike, whatever you're going to do. All right, so this is a quick look at the Cost Explorer. Notice the detail. This is a live account that I was working on to reduce costs by half. Now, how do we figure out half? That's a lot of experience. I looked at what was going on. We weren't in production yet. It was just development. I'm like, we're spending $2,000 a month on development. We have 5 developers. That's dumb. And my boss was like, he was the guy who set it up. He was like, yeah. And I was like, why are we doing this? He's like, I haven't had time to look. So I looked. Turns out we had one giant SQL Server instance. We didn't need a giant SQL Server instance. We needed a SQL Server instance that was the smallest one you can get. We didn't need it running 24/7. So instead, what did we do? I just wrote a little, actually had GPT write a little Python Lambda for me. That turns it off at 7 p.m. and turns it on at 7 a.m. 60% of the cost of that thing saved. and you can see the big blue RDS thing go. In your case, if your billing has alerted and you're like, ooh, what's going on? That's going to tell you where to look. All right, that's great. All right, that's a place to start. Now, how do we supplement that? We turn on CloudTrail. All right, actually, CloudTrail is on by default. And you don't really need to do anything more with it if you're a startup. If you are a large enterprise, you likely have policies about this already that you know you need to implement. Hopefully that's infrastructure as code and your life is easy. Okay, but all CloudTrail is a record of every single API call to the AWS cloud. And it is searchable. So that's actually CloudTrail for me setting up the last few slides. You can see in the upper filter, I'm searching on my name, my username, and you can see exactly what calls it's making. This is a really cool problem-solving tool as well, because let's say I have developer Brian, okay? Developer Brian is doing developer-y things and he keeps running into trouble because he doesn't have those permissions, right? And he's like, I'm trying to do this, but I keep getting these errors. Well, then you're in that, what error did you get? Well, let me go do it again because I didn't record the error. Nah, I just go search on Brian, figure out what he's trying to do, decide, is that part of the role that Brian should have? If it is, I assign it to him. If not, I help him figure out a workaround. What I don't do is say, sorry, sucker, you don't have the permissions, because that's not empathy. Brian is trying to get his job done. I don't want to be the department of yes, but I also don't want to be the department of no. I want to be the department of help me understand. Okay. So, finally securing the root account. This account can do everything. It is the big red self-destruct button if you're thinking about your physical data center experience. How many of you actually have physical data center experience? All right, so two or three people have seen the big red button, right? Ooh, Halon drop. Yeah, so it's a way to steal all of your data. And it's a way to lock everybody out except you. I can just go kill all the IAM accounts from the root account. Now I have complete control, including I don't have the credit card number, but I can run up spend, which you're responsible for, until you catch me. And since you can't get in, how are you going to do that? And you call AWS and say, I have an account, I can't get in, because that conversation is going to go well, right? Because every social engineer in the world isn't trying that. So, be ready. Lastly, where do you store the root credentials? This is a real problem. So, where do you in your company right now store your most sensitive information? That's where it belongs. Create a password of 20 or more characters and store it there. Seriously, write it on a piece of paper and put it in a safe. That's not a joke. That's actually very secure, okay? Put a copy somewhere in your home if you're like a really scrappy startup that doesn't have an office yet or whatever, and let somebody know where that is and how to access it in case you're unavailable. Because you don't want to be on vacation in Turks and Cacao away from internet access when somebody needs this thing and they have to come find you. Because one, they have to come find you, and two, that's your vacation, man. All right, set up multi-factor authentication. I cannot stress this enough. And you are, and again, this audience, if if you're not setting up an MFA by default, I would really like to know why, because you probably know something I don't. All right, but remember this: if you lock yourself out, you are truly hosed. AWS will not help you. Okay, so you can really hose yourself up. If you are the only person doing this, just set up a second token, which is possible for that same account, and store them separately. That way, if you lose one, you still have the other. Right? So finally, set up your billing, security, and operations contact emails. That was that AWS thing. AWS the account number. And AWS recommends as best practice having multiple AWS accounts for multiple reasons. For example, one for your staging environment, one for your production environment. All right, so as you grow, plan to have multiple AWS accounts at some point in your story arc of the future. It's not a marketing vector. I'm sorry. The security and operations stuff where you're handing AWS these emails, that is not a marketing vector. Anything that goes to that email is relevant to you. And the most important thing that you care about if you're thinking about CIA, the availability pillar, is you will get notices when they have hardware problems. Because remember, the cloud is just a bunch of data center stuff somebody's running for you, right? And that machine's going to die. So when it does, if your hypervisor happens to be on it and they have to take an action that could cause downtime or a blip or whatever, they're going to email you and let you know about that, and they'll often schedule it. if they have to upgrade the hypervisor underneath that's running all the stuff, they're going to tell you when that's going to happen via these emails. So you actually know you should be paying attention to those emails. Don't bin them. Make sure they're going to some place where you're going to pay attention because AWS is trying to help you out. And remember that GPT is really good at helping you set these things up. You don't have to walk out of here going, oh my God, where are my notes? You just have to walk out of here going, oh my God, where's GPT? Oh yeah, search GPT on Google and get to the new Google. Well, I mean, that was what it was with Alta Vista, right? So, okay, finally, the last thing that you do, as I mentioned in passing, is you create an IAM role. IAM is a free service, more or less, in AWS. You can create any number of users, any number of groups, any number of roles. The one that you want to create is the one that is the AWS Policy Administrator Access. That's, instead of God mode, it's just deity mode. You can't delete the account. There's other things that you can't do, but they're very, very high level that you'll never need to do on a day-to-day basis. Okay, secure that with MFA as well. Remember, that should be assigned to a human, probably yourself if you're the one doing this. And all the remaining work you're about to do should be done with this user. In fact, I didn't mention it in the slides, but I will mention it here. Another alert you should set up right away is anytime somebody logs in with the root credentials, you should get woken up. That is a security event, straight up. And if you're getting woken up a lot, you have a problem to fix. And I'm going to say this multiple times. You do not have a technology problem. You have a people problem. I don't care what the problem is, it's always a people problem. Okay, and then finally, set a password policy. I'm sorry, not finally. So you're now the IAM administrator user. Set up, you're an IAM user with administrator access. Set up a password policy. Every human is an attack vector. I mean, how are most attacks successful? Phishing. Humans are the weak link in the chain. We are lazy and we are mistake prone. And we will easily pick crappy passwords if not required to do so. So I love this comic. If you're not familiar with XKCD, your life is not complete and you should fix that. But so this comic actually explains how to create secure passwords that humans can remember. All right, so you can take a picture of that if you want. And let's go back here. I don't know what's my pet's name, Boo. So my Boo is dead in 2024 because that was my dog when I was 5. I'm old. That's a great password. There's a lot of entropy in that. It checks all the boxes with numbers and characters and whatnot. You notice I'm using camel case. I could use snake case, whatever. But I can remember that. Pet name for my wife. Whatever that is, right? So create passphrases, not passwords. Now I don't need to tell anybody in this room that. But remember, we're going to delegate access to AWS. We're going to delegate access to our data center to developers whose first concern is building stuff, not securing it. It's on us to train them. This is what we should be training them on. Very simple. That way they can remember their passwords. Okay, so that's how easy it is to set up a password in AWS. And remember, if a user doesn't have good habits, this falls under all problems are people problems. And that old saw was actually Solomon, over 2,000 years ago. So, apparently that guy knew about the internet, So, hey, cannot stress this enough. You have a people problem, you don't have a technology problem. The moment you realize that, you're going to come to a much better solution. So keep that in mind as we're going through these things, because MFA and AWS really is trouble, believe it or not, for IAM users. Passwords are becoming more secure by the day with AI and quantum computing. Rainbow tables can be gotten through so much faster and easier. And did you notice how, 8 years ago or so, the NSA and any other government organization stopped griping about encryption? Why would that have happened? Just let that sink in. All right. And the bad guys have AI and all that other stuff too. In fact, there are actual LLMs out there specifically to support bad actor activities. MFA means that you must have something physical in your possession to access the account. It means that even if the attacker has the password, they also have to be able to somehow exploit and get the token. So AWS does not easily support MFA. And recently, 2007 called and wants its security back. I don't think AWS has picked up yet. So in order to enforce MFA, you actually have to write a custom policy. Assign it to the user, and then assign it to the user group that these folks are gaining their privileges from. Do not assign policies directly to a user. Always assign policies to a group and groups to the, and then the user to the groups. All right, and you can just ask GPT. I've done it with this prompt. And if you want, if you get the slides, there's a gist to the policy that I use to enforce MFA. So you might think to yourself, hey, I've got the thing. I am now enforcing MFA. Bob is in fact my uncle. Actually, he's my father-in-law, but you know, it works. All right, but you've got to be ready. This is change management 101. It's one of the things that we as operators and security personnel fail at. I did my job. It is secure. And now nobody else can do their job. But that's not your problem, right? It's not my problem. We're secure. Well, if that's the case, let's just go unplug everything and be done with it, right? So what do they need to do? They need to go and do those 4 things. What do you need to do? You need to over-communicate, overstate, and over-restate that in every single channel you can before you make the change. Otherwise, for n number of users, you will have to answer the question 1.5n number of times, why is AWS broken? Okay? Change management is a real thing, and as technologists, we often don't do enough of it. If you have a project manager who is part of your staff, that you rub elbows with, they're going to be skilled in that. Get them to help you. Project manager's job is to facilitate communication. So take advantage of that, communicating. All right? Because remember, it wasn't a technology problem. It's a people problem. Having empathy with those folks, understanding that when they see a screen full of errors, which is what they'll see when you enable MFA, makes it look like AWS is broken. They're not going to read the errors. Oh my God, it's broken. What's going on? So if you prep them for that, then you have a very small job to do. Next thing, I think this is table stakes in this crowd, but it's worth mentioning. Avoid human access keys for robotic processes. And the typical scenario is this. I'm a consultant. You bring me in. You ask me to write a gizmo. So I write the gizmo, and I have it access the S3 bucket the gizmo needs to get data with my access key and token. OK, great. I'm done. I've done a good job. We agree. I ride off into the sunset. You deactivate my account. Your gizmo's not working. Why? Well, if you hired me to do it, you might not know all the things you should know about AWS, right? That's why you hired me. This is actually very typical for the clients we get. They're not technical clients, so they have lots of gaps in their knowledge. So what should I do? Create a service account. So that's a pretty typical pattern that I think everyone here will be familiar with. All right? Again, raise your hand, tell me if you're not, tell me I'm an idiot, whatever. Worse but less likely, if I have that token, and that token is giving me access to things I wouldn't normally have as a developer, I can exploit that to get access to other things that I may not, right? So I can escalate my own privileges. And even worse, if you just dump me in the administrator group so I can get my job done, my token, the thing the application is using, has those privileges. Not great. So what do so yeah, you can use a service account, but AWS actually has something way better, which is called a role. A role is actually a temporary credential that never lives on permanent storage, only lives in memory. So what happens is, instead of assigning a user and an access token, access key and secret to an application, you define the role the same way you define a user group, and then you assign that role to the application. And then what happens is, when the application goes to access S3, it gets that temporary token, only stores it in memory, does the thing, and then that is gone and won't be reused. So that's the most secure that you can get. It's also the most convenient you can get because you don't have to do anything but manage the role. You don't have to rotate secrets. It's already being done for you, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's a superpower. It is a little more complicated, but turns out you can ask GPT how to do that. All right. Actually, before I go on to groups, let me stop. Any questions, comments, concerns? Is anyone thinking, why on F did I come in here? This is all so basic. I wish I could leave, but I don't want to embarrass the guy. It's okay. You're not going to hurt my feeling. You're not going to find it. All right? I would much rather you went and got the thing you wanted to get. So, and there are 2 other great talks going on right now. All right. All right. So, reason through 3 user groups. Again, coming at this from the, I have a brand new account, I'm relatively unfamiliar with AWS, I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. What does that look like? Well, simplicity means security will happen when you're just getting started. Okay, I can secure all the things in detail. I am capable of doing that. I have never been in a business context where that is the right thing to do, even when I was working in air-gapped systems with the DoD. Okay, so, the F-16 avionics are right here, and I am not securing all the things. Because again, nobody could get their job done. It's obvious to any new administrator. What we need a system for a new administrator that is obvious to operate. The idea here is that that third bullet doesn't make any sense, sorry. If you need SOC 2 or IS 27001 compliance, just having 3 user groups will get you past that your first time. Okay, it'll also get you past PCI if you are careful about what your devs can and can't do. All right, so you don't have to be like crazy, oh, gotta have 15 groups because there are actually 15 personas in the organization. Nah. So what we recommend is you have the administrator group. Remember that we created that first IAM user with administrator access? Well, maybe Silver and I are both administrators. We're large enough that we have a team of 2. So he would also get his own account with administrator access. Done. All right, so I have a user group called admin or whatever, administrator. Then I have a group of developers. They need to be able to do their job. Okay, so we figure out what that job is, and from all there's over 200 of them, AWS policies, we allow them access to Lambda, access to RDS, access to this, access to that. And we probably over-allow it in the beginning, and that's okay because there's this notion of trust that I'll give you some research on in just a second, or at least some research to go look up, and we're going to over-allow that. They can do all the things. And then we're going to have a dev high group. Maybe that's my staff engineer, my principal architect, or something of that nature. A few of those folks, they're going to have even more privileges. Maybe they'll get the privileges that allow them to actually manage the AWS instance and even kill it. All right. I'm sorry, the RDS instance, not the AWS instance. And kill it. All right. Remember, use managed policies. Best practice, in my opinion, this is not in the security pillar, is to write your own AWS policies for everything. And that may seem like it's over the top, and it is. But the truth of the matter is AWS will go occasionally, this may happen once every 2 years, and they will change the makeup of one of their predefined policies, and it will hose you. Because they did that to plug a security hole, but remember, plugging a security hole generally means people can't do something, and one of your applications is operating on the idea that it can do that. So that's the best in terms of CIA, that availability aspect of things, right? So keep that in mind, but when you're just getting started, if you're not familiar with AWS, if you're limited on time, something is better than nothing. Use what AWS has defined for you, and if you only feel that pain once every 2 years, you're probably still winning. Avoid assigning policies directly to users. Oh, yeah, I mentioned that before, right? Hey, let me mention that again. Avoid assigning policies directly to users. That's a complication. You don't need that. Now, and then last but not least, this is a gotcha that will drive you absolutely batty. For a user group, you can only have 10 policies. And by the time you go Lambda, EC2, S3, and MFA, and RDS, you are out of those 10 slots. So what do you have to do? You have to create multiple user groups and kind of stitch them together. So I actually would recommend, instead of devlow, I would say devlow1, devlow2 for the user group names. That way you know how to collapse things. All right, so just, again, 2007 is calling wants its security back. So remember that in the end, the management of an AWS account is generally a corporate IT function, not a development function. You don't know who you will be handing this off to in the future, so you have a human problem. Be kind to the future, either future you or that future person. They should be able to look at the names of things and reason about how they're supposed to operate. All right? And then, again, write down the practices. So here's an example. This is the account I've been fixing. And what you can see is that you can't see that. I didn't want you to see it. The developers were overprivileged. They could do nearly anything. And there were no more room for new policies. That was one of the reasons why. They just overprivileged everybody because they didn't know how to get around the limit of 10. So I created a new set. I'm creating a new group, developer, and 1 and developer 2, and I'm moving them over. And then, again, change management, Monday. Hey, next Monday, you guys, I'm moving you over to the new group. You're going to lose some privileges. If that impacts you, let me know. And on Monday, I was watching Slack really, really carefully. On Tuesday, somebody said, our front-end developer, she was like, I can't do this one thing. It had to do with an S3 bucket. And I was like, that's weird. I looked. It had to do with the change I made, fixed it, life moved on. Because I was super loud about what was happening, they knew what was going on, they knew when it was going to happen, and they knew how and where to ask questions. That was a very successful rollout and change. All right, easy peasy. Now on to trust. So remember, I said exceptions are complications. Remember, don't assign policies directly to users. That's a complication. You're building a business. You are not building a security. Now, you might be building a security business if you're one of our sponsors who I hope you will frequent, but we're building a business here. What's the goal of any business? You've read the goal. So it's okay in the early days to have users who are overprivileged because we can trust them. Now, of course, there are edge case exceptions to this, right? But in general, that's true. And Robin Dunbar has done an enormous amount of research as an anthropologist over the years about what circles of trust look like. So you can have 5 people in your closest circle of trust. And you can maintain about 150 friendship-like relationships. 15 is the next number from 5 in terms of, right? And if you think about ideal team sizes and the 2 pizza rule and all that stuff, so some of that colloquial wisdom is actually backed up by research that's over 30 years old. So again, it's not a matter of getting the security perfect, it's a matter of meeting the need at the time and understanding what the humans can, can't, should not be able to do. So again, with that, I just wanted you to see the red because hopefully now, like Pavlov, you're thinking it. It's not a technology problem, it's a people problem. All right, and then finally, storing your sensitive information. Now, coming from the context of just getting started, we've got a company, we've got an idea, we're developing some software, and we've got sensitive information that we want to store. So you might be thinking LastPass or 1Password or that vendor or this vendor. Turns out, AWS has something called Secrets Manager. And there are 2 reasons to use it. One, it is effectively free. It's that cheap. I think it's like a penny every time you access a secret. Okay, the second thing is, and this is more advanced, but it's a real opportunity. For services like RDS, you can hit a button and it will rotate your password with no downtime. So Secrets Manager, does that. But there's a more human reason for doing this as well. Security is a form of quality. I have been at this conference many times and I have asserted that you are nothing more than quality assurance engineers. That hurts, doesn't it? Sorry. Well, and the truth of the matter is quality assurance engineers don't get nearly the credit they should because that's where DevOps started. Don't let anybody tell you any different. The SDETs and QA people, they were automating things long before DevOps came along. So, as a DevOps guy, I embrace that. I got Andrew Clay Schaefer to admit that, so I feel good. It's hard to win an argument with that guy. So research shows that fewer vendors causes greater quality. Let that sink in. Fewer vendors causes greater quality. You can read the books on how Toyota kicked America's butt in quality with their cars, and this is one of the things that they did. At one point, it was, I think Toyota had 14 vendors. Now those vendors had plenty of sub-vendors and all, but Toyota's attitude was, I want to manage those 14, I want to manage the quality of those 14, and that's how it's going to work. All right? This is real research. Don't go and throw a vendor tool at everything. Don't go and throw a tool, because even if there's no vendor behind it, it's still really a vendor. It's just that you can't talk to the vendor because it's some open source project. Okay, that just makes it harder, not easier. Okay, so really think about that. Limit the number of vendors because fewer vendors is better quality. If quality is security, if security is quality, then fewer vendors is better security. I have a tool secrets manager in AWS, which is a key vendor and is always going to be, it's my infrastructure, I should use it until I can't. And then finally, secrets manager, excuse me, is extremely easy to navigate. I actually finally proved this to myself because the team that I'm currently managing on one of my projects, all of them had exactly 0 AWS experience when they started. And I said, stick that stuff in secrets manager. I just wanted to see what would happen. And it was a bit of a hot mess. I'll show you here in just a second. But they got it, they did it. And then when I said we should do these things instead, they immediately sorted it out and life is good. So through that experiment, I can stand here and tell you, very easy to implement. All right, the only thing you need to remember is namespaces. So maybe I have a secret that's for the business, like it's our Salesforce, our root Salesforce credentials. So I'll prefix that with biz. Now, this namespacing is important, names matter, because you can write custom IAM policy that will allow access for a certain group of users only to that namespace. So you don't even have to manage multiple secret stores. It's just the same secret store and you're managing through namespaces. Okay, so, and again, there's a GPT prompt that would explain how to do that. Oh, and by the way, does anyone know the most awesome hack ever when GPT says, here's how you do a thing and you don't understand? You just respond, explain that to me like I'm a 5th grader. I'm not kidding. Okay, my wife teaches math at the college, and I told her that, and she's been doing that with her students who are all trying to learn how to teach math to elementary school kids, who happen to be 5th graders in some cases. And yeah, I mean, they get excited when they meet me now. Oh, you're the guy that did the 5th grader thing, you know? The other thing is when you're done with GPT for the day, the last thing you should do is say, write a haiku about it, and then enjoy a good laugh. So remember that no matter how badly you screw up with Secrets Manager, you can always break the glass, go to your root user, and fix it if you have to, okay? And you didn't need another vendor to do that. So this is the mess that they kind of made. You can see that this one has a dash, this one has a pass. So if I wanted to write custom policy, I have to do all this like this or that, right? There's really no good name spacing, et cetera, et cetera. And so when I pointed out what I just explained to you guys to the team, I was like, I want you to fix that. They made a pretty good effort, and then I came in and cleaned up behind them and explained, what was going on. Did you hear all that? There was technology involved, but I had a people problem. And in this case, it was just the innocent, they didn't know. So I took the time to understand they didn't know, and then I made sure that they got a chance to try it, and then I made sure that they knew what to do. And now I don't worry about Secrets Manager anymore, except once a month when my little calendar item goes off and says, check Secrets Manager for stupidity. And my calendar is public, so they see that and they think it's funny. Last thing, again, documentation at the point of the thing is really important. If you were in Neil's talk earlier about infrastructure as code and checkoff, checkoff will reject things that it'll throw an error, just like any other static analysis tool, if it doesn't have a description, if an object doesn't have a description on it, right? So do that. Describe things. And then finally, a bit of a sales pitch. I work for Victory, but I'm not talking about Victory. I'm talking about what you can do if you want to get a third party involved. Okay, setting up using groups and access patterns requires asking a lot of questions of the business. All right, how are they doing business and so forth and so on. It sits at the intersection of 3 functions that are generally covered by executives: a CIO, corporate IT, governance, the VP of compliance, and security, a CISO. All right, thus by definition, it's political. And it's subject to Parkinson's law of the trivial. If you're not familiar with that, go to bikeshed.org. Okay, but Parkinson's law of the trivial says if somebody thinks they can understand something because it's easy, they will have an opinion on it. And you can further extrapolate if somebody has an opinion and you don't acknowledge that, they're going to be butthurt and now you have a problem. Okay? Think about teachers for just a minute. You sat for 13 years and watched teachers teach. And everyone thinks that's easy. Ask me about what a teacher actually does sometime. I was a teacher for 10 years. All right? And you will be amazed. It's not easy. Okay, so it's not difficult to do all this, but it does take some time and it does take some experience to know what to ask and what to do. So it's 12 to 20 hours. If you're a business trying to get started and you've got valuable people who need to be doing valuable things, it might be worth about $3,000 to just have somebody do it. But the key outcomes here are this. Arrange the thing. The statement of work should come back saying, you're going to teach me to fish, not give me a fish. Consultants don't like that because it means they don't get to come back and bill you again. All right? So make sure you're finding the right consultancy to get it done that way. You leave the engagement with the thing you needed done and the knowledge on how to maintain it and do it yourself going forward. Okay? And they should leave documentation. Ask for samples of documentation from other projects. Make sure that they're not just saying, yeah, we can do that, because sure, given that they're going to bill you per hour, it'll just take more hours to do it. You want to see samples of documentation so you know it's not going to take 20 extra hours just to write the things down. Okay? So make sure that if you're going to go the route of asking a third party for help, that you set up the engagement so that you're better off when they leave, not just the problem is solved. All right. And if you're in operations and security, it's not teach a man to fish, it's build a man a fire and he'll be warm for the day, but set a man on fire and he'll be warm for the rest of his life. And that was Terry Pratchett, if you're familiar. And I'm about out of time. So I want to stop there. Any questions? Anyone want to tell me I'm a horrible human and I wasted, you want that hour of your life back or anything like that?
You're a horrible human and I want that hour of my life back.
Good luck with that. that was sympathy, by the way, not empathy.
Has anyone ever taken you up on that before?
What's that? Oh, always, yeah. So, so the first time I went to do a talk on Docker, I was at Red Hat, and I was representing a company that was not open source. And there were these two zealots in the back of the room that would not let me say 5 words without asking me why it wasn't open source. They had to be thrown out. So, yeah, you guys are a soft target. So, anything else, y'all? Yes, ma'am. So the question is, why do I have so much confidence in GPT? And the answer is, I didn't do a good job right here, right now, because implicitly, for everything that I do at GPT, I test it. You're right. You're absolutely right. So that's why I said that's a fantastic question, right? So when I do anything with GPT, I test the crap out of it. And if I happen to have access to one of our offensive security specialists, I ask them to test it because they're going to be way better at that than I am. So thank you for that question. That's a distinction I should have made. I really appreciate it. You guys, there are going to be awesome talks here in 10 minutes, and I think there are treats. I think it's treat time, right? I'm sorry? 2:45. Oh, 2:45. I'm sorry. I thought it was 1:45. Okay, cool. So if you want to get me, I'm around. I'll be wearing the purple volunteer shirt tomorrow too. So please, hit me up. Let me know what you'd like to know, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. It's a pleasure. Thank you.